Okay, as you enter the room, go ahead and mute your mic.
No, come te associate?
Great. Welcome, everyone. We are going to get started with our webinar today. Thank you so much for joining us on your lunch hour. My name is Jen Maynard, she, her, hers, Casca Dene, and I am the Business Resource Navigator to Washington and Idaho, but I have the pleasure of working on this CCIF project with Oregon. And today as you know, we have a series of webinars, and what we're going to be focusing on today is best practices for bookkeeping and financial wellness. And we have a wonderful partnership with Taito Alba Accounting and Advisory. And they are here with us today. Here, I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure out this confirm your speaking language thing. There we go.
Thanks.
Okay. So Taito Alba is represented today by Chrissy Justice, and Chrissy is going to be walking us through all sorts of things, bookkeeping and financial wellness in relation to the CCIF Child Care Infrastructure Funds application. So next, I'm going to be handing this over to Isabella, who is going to talk to us a little bit about our interpretation services.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, so if you would like to hear this presentation today in a different language, you should be able to see a little globe pop up on the lower right hand panel. On your Zoom, you can click on that globe that says interpretation, and then from there select which audio channel you would like to listen in. And also, if you would like to hear it in English, be sure to click on the English channel. That's where we'll all be for the main part of the presentation, and then we'll have live interpreters on their own channels. So if you have any questions about the interpretation, please feel free to jump in the chat and we'll get it figured out. But yeah, from there, I'll pass it to Chrissy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today and having me here to talk about bookkeeping and financial reporting for grants. I am a consulting controller for Taito Alba Accounting and Advisory, and we support small businesses and organizations with their accounting and bookkeeping. So today we're going to be going over a number of things. We'll just go over the agenda. First and foremost, which we're doing now, is welcome and introductions, understanding bookkeeping basics, tools and technology for streamlined bookkeeping and accounting, managing grant funds with confidence, grant compliance and financial reporting. And finally, at the end, we're going to have some time for questions and answers for anything that you want to discuss during this meeting. Okay, key takeaways. So today we're going to go over topics, and hopefully by the end, you'll know the key components of effective bookkeeping, effective strategies for financial management, comparing popular accounting systems and platforms, and understanding functionality and pricing of those, setting up systems to track your grant-related income and expenses, budget tracking and compliance with CCIF grant requirements, key financial statements, the profit and loss statement, which some of you may have experience with already, and the balance sheet. And then also some tips and best practices for tracking your expenses and income should you get audited or to provide reporting for your grant. Okay, understanding bookkeeping bookkeeping basics. So this is very important, as you well know, running your own facilities. Knowledge is power. The more you know about your finances and profitability, the better you can make decisions for running your business. So knowing how your revenue, different revenue streams, your income is performing, understanding if you need to hire staff, can you afford to hire staff or make a purchase for your center? When you need to file your taxes, it's very important to be able to know if you're needing to save for tax payments, did you have a loss, that type of thing. So having solid bookkeeping is important there. Should you be audited? That's really important. And should you need to obtain a loan, you need to provide financial data in order to get that loan. Components and benefits of bookkeeping. So we talked about that a little bit in the prior slide, but kind of just the pieces of basic bookkeeping include expense tracking. So that means everything that you're spending throughout the month in your business bank account or cash, that you have a good handle on all of those expenses and what you are expending in total. Another piece of good bookkeeping is balancing your accounts, making sure that everything that you're entering into the accounting platform is reconciled throughout the year so that you know that your data is clean and correct. And then reporting. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And sorry, hold on one second. I just got to pop up. Yes, my apologies. Reporting. We're going to talk about reporting and understanding financial reports. Some of you may already have this experience and may already have something like QuickBooks Online in place, but we're going to talk about those reports so that you can understand them. Should you look at them, you'll be able to understand and make decisions based on what you're seeing on those reports. So there are some common challenges that can come up with childcare facilities and small businesses in general. So one of those is moving from the shoebox method to a digital system for bookkeeping. Now I see this a lot with small businesses where you're really just keeping track of all your paperwork, which is excellent. You have it in a box, you go to do your taxes, you hand them this box of receipts, and they spend the time they need to put together your taxes and your financials. But the goal would be to be doing this throughout the year so that you can make decisions. And the best way to do that is to have a method of doing digital bookkeeping. Another thing there's a common challenge is cash flow, making sure you have enough funds in the bank to pay for the things that you need to pay for, excuse me. So if you don't have reporting in place, you might not know where you're at in that case. Another thing, a challenge that can happen is knowing when to raise prices. If you're charging a certain amount for daycare for your clients, but your expenses far outweigh the amount that you're bringing in, it might be time to raise your prices. Time to complete bookkeeping. So I know a lot of you might be doing everything, right? You're like, how can I also do all the bookkeeping as well? So time to complete that bookkeeping and keep on top of it is another challenge that we see. And then also controlling costs. Sometimes we just have to buy the things that we need in order to keep business flowing and not be able to, we might not know, oh, we're actually spending X number of dollars in cleaning supplies. And that's way too much just because we're busy and we're not tracking it on a monthly basis. If you are able to set up an accounting system, something like QuickBooks, which we'll talk, I think in the next slide, is you start to gain visibility. You start to understand how your revenue, are you charging enough? You're also being able to really understand your spending and what your costs truly are. And then also know throughout the year, am I running at a profit or am I running at a loss? And what can I do to tackle that before the end of the year, right? So that's very important. And I see a couple of chats coming through, so please let me know If my pacing is a little bit too fast, just feel free to raise your hand. Okay, so tools and technology for organized bookkeeping. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about QuickBooks Online. I don't work for Intuit, but it really is the front running system, the best system for small businesses and their accounting. So QuickBooks Online allows you to connect all of your bank data to flow into your accounting system. It has an application for saving receipts. It has a way to reconcile all of your accounts and also provide what's called GAAP compliant financial statements for tax preparation, bank loans, audit, and then also to help support you with your grant tracking. That price range is somewhere between $35 and $99 per month for a subscription. And if you think about it, if any of you are doing your accounting and bookkeeping right now in spreadsheets, you know how labor intensive that is. And your time has a value to it, especially when you're trying to do a lot to run your daycare center. So paying that subscription fee often becomes less expensive than the time that you're spending trying to track something manually. There are other systems. So we have things like, and there are probably more than that I have on this list, but Xero, FreshBooks, Sage Intacct, and NetSuite are a few of the other systems that you can get other than QuickBooks Online. And the pricing for some of these is similar to that of QuickBooks Online, but might not have all the features that QuickBooks Online has. So there are other systems as well. So you may have heard of things like Expensify for tracking receipts. Maybe there's Concur and also Dext. And this is a way to track your receipts should you need to provide those in the future. But again, with a system like QuickBooks Online, it does all of those things. They are really building out that system to be everything that you need. So managing grant funds with confidence. So having a system in place like QuickBooks Online will allow you to use technology to track grants and grant spending. The way QuickBooks Online does it, and you may have this set up already, is it allows you to set up something called a class. And a class typically would be, in this case, would be the name of your grant. So CCIF. Every single expense that comes in that you are using those grant funds to pay, those you are able to tag it with that class so that at the end of a period or reporting period, you're able to run a profit and loss statement, which we're going to talk about on the next slide, specific to that grant. So you can say, yes, I spent all these grant funds specifically on these expenses. So that's really why it's super important to have a more digital system, because if you tried to do something like this in Excel or some manual system, it would be quite a challenge. No, I guess we're not quite to the profit and loss statement yet. So we're going to talk a little bit about audit ready books and records. So oftentimes when you're using grant funds for your facility, you're needing to provide reporting, like I mentioned, the grant related profit and loss statement, but also might need to provide receipts. This can also come into play should you be audited by the IRS, which can happen, or even the state sometimes. So things that are really important to have in place prior to an audit, just so you're ready. So audit ready is to have digital or paper receipts for all of your expenses. I find that keeping them digitally is helpful, but also some clients, and I'm not talking about go back to the shoebox method that we talked about before, but if you had an accounting system, say QuickBooks Online, you can still keep your receipts in a paper file, kind of do it by year, just having those ready to go. Or with a system like QuickBooks or Concur, you can actually scan those receipts and keep them all together somewhere. I know oftentimes we received email receipts at this point. I'll also see clients create folders in their email to save those receipt copies so that they're ready. Clean books. So we've talked about that a lot in the prior slides. Making sure that all of your expenses and income are running through your bank account is the easiest way, because a system like QuickBooks will pull all of those in. So you want to make sure that all of your data and your transactions are in, and that things are reconciled regularly, ideally monthly. In addition, and this is kind of one of those things that's dependent on the size of your center, is delegation of duties. So oftentimes when audits happen for larger facilities, they might want to know that, for instance, the person paying the bills is not reconciling the bank account, right? That there's a delegation of duties. Someone's making deposits, there's another person writing, signing the checks, and then also having an external firm file your taxes. Sometimes it's also good to have a bookkeeping firm. So maybe you have a bookkeeping firm and also then a firm that files your taxes. So it's not that you're doing all of those things and you're having a second pair of eyes or third pair of eyes reviewing your data to make sure it's compliant. Now that's, some of those things are kind of not always, you're not always able to have that delegation of duties, especially if you're running your facility and it's just you. You're really wearing all the hats, and I understand that that can be a challenge. So that's not always possible, but in general, you just want to make sure that you have the clean books and very detailed records of what you're doing. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the profit and loss statement and balance sheet on the next two slides. So the profit and loss statement, you may have heard, is also called the income statement. So on these, good to know is that typically these reports are a period of time. So a lot of times it might be 1 month at a time. So one view of everything, income and expenses that happen in a month. In this example here, Nanny Penny, you can see that this report is for August 2020, so it's a little bit old, but it's 1 month of data. But ideally you would have a full year of data, especially if you're using an accounting system that then goes to your CPA at the end of the year. Important to know, the profit and loss statement resets at the end of every year. So for instance, we'll just kind of look at this. We'll kind of dig in here. For August 2020, the top section of the profit and loss statement will always be income received or revenue. So income from the daycare facility from the families that you support. So in this case, Nanny Penny had $12,200 in revenue in the month of August. Below that is a section for expenses. So that's going to be everything: food, toys, utilities, rent, training, payroll, any of those expenses. And what you see here are the totals spent throughout the month. So when we talked about earlier about knowledge is power and your spending with an accounting system, you would know that you had, sorry, this is offline, $1,500 worth of utilities. So it's like knowing this at the end of the month, you have that power of knowing what you're spending and where you can make tweaks. But in this case, there were $7,600 in expenses in that month. The bottom line that you see on the report, net income, shows revenue minus expenses. So Nanny Penny had $4,600 of profit in the month of August. And that's really the basics of what you're going to see on a profit and loss statement. It's pretty standard. This profit and loss statement that you're looking at has a bit more detail. It looks like this example was probably made in Excel. The next report we're going to look at will look a little more standard for what you would normally see in a QuickBooks Online or online platform. But this is a great example of a profit and loss statement. Move on to balance sheet next. Okay, now balance sheet. So this is a really great example of a balance sheet. A balance sheet is a little bit different from a profit. Well, it's a lot different than a profit and loss statement. It's good to know that this report runs from the beginning of time. So the day that you opened your business through today, right? And into the future, meaning the accounts that are tracked on this report ebb and flow over time. So it's different in that the profit and loss statement is a snapshot period. This one is always a running total of all of these accounts, and we'll get into what so on a balance sheet, it is tracking your assets, liabilities, and equity. Assets are things like, you can see it here in the top, are things like your bank account, petty cash, so cash on hand, basically. It also tracks accounts receivable. Some of you may not have accounts receivable, but what that is if you were invoicing your clients monthly for your services and they weren't paying you right away, those amounts owed to you stay in accounts receivable until they are paid. So it's considered an asset because it's something that's going to build to the value of your business at some point in the future. Other things that you will see on the balance sheet are things, or in the asset section, is fixed assets. So that is furniture and equipment, you know, anything that has a value that's going to be around for a while, your computer, those type of things. If you owned your facility, the business owned the facility, you might see buildings, land and buildings being in there as well. Motor vehicles. So if the business owns your vehicle, you'll also see it on there. Again, these are things that add value to the business. The next section on the balance sheet is the liability section. So liability is anything that you owe to an external organization. So an example of that is a business loan to a bank. It might be a credit card balance, or basically anything that needs to be paid in the future. So you'll see, so basically those things kind of it doesn't take away from the value of the business, but what the balance sheet is doing is looking at things you own versus things you owe. So that's what liabilities are. The next section on the balance sheet is the equity section. And in that section, an accounting system will track all of your prior year profits, any sort of investment that you've made into your business. So for example, let's say you started your facility 5 years ago and you went to the bank and you put in $500 into your checking account of your personal money. That is considered your investment into the business and is tracked under the equity section of the balance sheet. Those are the main things that fall on the balance sheet. And it's an important report that if you are going to go get a loan, this is what the bank would want to see. They want to see how much money you have in the bank, who you owe, and how much you've contributed to your business. And then, like I said, that year over year profit that gets run through the balance sheet as well. From this report, the bank or the organization that you're getting a loan from can really understand the health of your business and where it's going. So very important, two very important reports to really understand how to read. So talked about reporting. I know that was kind of a lot, and I'm happy to talk about that more during Q&A. And I would love to hear once we get there, probably after I once I get through this slide, to understand how you're tracking your expenses if you want to share. But for now, I'm going to go over just some grant compliance and financial reporting, and then we'll talk about that. So expense tracking. What should be tracked? So oftentimes I will hear, you know, if there's something that's $20, do we need to track it? Yes, absolutely. So anything that you purchase with credit cards, your bank account, or cash should be recorded. The reason being is those things are write-offs. And it's good to always have those receipts. So we've talked about that a little bit, about being audit ready. So having the receipts and having everything recorded is very important. This is kind of a recap of what we've talked about before, is how should it be tracked? Like I've said before, using technology to your advantage is really important. So using applications, an accounting system or application plus any receipt recording application will definitely help you. But again, it's also fine if you're more comfortable with paper, you have an accounting system set up, but you can keep that backup in paper form if you're more comfortable with that. Reporting, so we've talked about that. Understanding financial statements like profit and loss and the balance sheet. And then being sure to set up your system so that you can track expenses related to grants so that you can provide. Remember, I showed the profit and loss statement. You can actually create a profit and loss statement by grant so that you can provide that reporting with receipts, should that be the process. So we talked through, I'm just going to recap. So we talked about best practices for bookkeeping, how important it is to select some sort of application to track your accounting. We talked about financial statements and how to keep to audit ready books, receipts, and tracking. And then we've talked about just kind of the nuts and bolts of a profit and loss and balance sheet statement, which are important to know. So that concludes the bookkeeping portion, and then we're going to do a Q&A here in a few more slides, but I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jen, for the this section about the technical support.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. That was such an awesome overview. I really appreciate your time and your efforts on this, and look forward to the questions and answers portion of this opportunity today with our webinar. I wanted to let you all know that First Children's Finance and the Northwest Native Chamber provide technical assistance for you all who are applying for the CCIF grant. And we understand that it's complex and there are all kinds of moving parts, and every single application is unique. So I just wanted to let you all know that we provide application support, financial projections, creating a budget. Those are a couple of things that are going to be important for your application. So if you need assistance with that, make sure and reach out. Business planning is always important, especially when you are continuing to support the efforts of this grant. If you are awarded this grant, you might need to access further capital. And in order to do that, you're going to need a really strong business plan, marketing plan. That is always something that is really important, especially to highlight some of the changes that will be happening within your organization, so that the public knows what you have to offer as you're building, and just working that into your strategy as you scale up. Project implementation planning, timelines are everything, making sure that you have good contracts, making sure that you are on track with all of the different moving parts that have to do with the implementation of your plan. Legal assistance, going back to contracts again. Grant writing. We also have a webinar on grant writing that will be recorded. Hopefully you all will attend our whole series of webinars. Let's see, accounting and CPA support, tax consulting and preparation, bookkeeping, employment, HR consulting, and capital access strategy development. So we are here to support you all in accessing all of these opportunities to support your business as you apply for this application. And then after you are either awarded or have not been awarded and still want to move forward with some of your plans for scaling up, and just looking at how strategies will shift for you. So please reach out. I wanted to go over our upcoming webinar just briefly before we move into Q&A. And on the 10th, we're going to have the 10th of April. All of these webinars are in April, the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th. So mark your calendars, get out your phones and get this QR code. You can access us also through our website for these important events. So we have application support for round 2, April 10th. Grant writing for your CCIF application from April 17th. Building a marketing plan for April 24th. The last 2 are during the lunch hour, but it is to be noted that the first one, this CCIF round 2 application support, is in the evening from 6 to 7:30. So that might be a little bit different for you all. Make sure that you make note in your calendar. And yeah, I look forward to supporting you all, getting to know you all. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Chrissy for Q&A.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. Feel free to unmute. I see there are a few chats. I'm gonna open that as well, but now's your time to ask any specific questions about anything that we talked about, but also if you have any questions specific to that you've been trying to work on there for your center.
I had a question.
Yes.
So I do most of my bookkeeping on Excel, but I
Mhm.
have it all set up that I put like a code in and it will expense it to the right category. And
Great.
then it will go off my budget. So it's like all the spreadsheets are connected. And then I do all my 941s and everything and all my payroll through QuickBooks. Do you recommend that I switch everything on QuickBooks? Because I did QuickBooks for at the beginning, and the only problem I had is if I transferred $100 out of savings and put it in checking to cover expenses, it would expense it, and I didn't know how to correct that. You know how I would set up QuickBooks so I wouldn't do that every time I transferred money out of savings into checking and not to expense it?
Yes. So how long ago were you using QuickBooks Online?
Well, when I first opened in 2019, I was using QuickBooks and I would scan the receipt and it would tell me where to expense it. And I did all that. And then it would match it with, and sometimes it wouldn't match it with the right receipt. So I had to manually go change it. And then I had to erase like if I took the savings out and put it into there, I had to go fix all that. And I noticed that I was doing more time fixing the QuickBooks because I do have an accounting degree. I have my bachelor's degree in accounting. So I knew QuickBooks, but I never did online QuickBooks, if that makes sense. I just had the software.
Okay.
And the problem I was having is it was expensing stuff that didn't need to be expensed. It was just a transfer. And it was so hard to go back and fix it. And that's why I set up Excel. And Excel puts it in my budget. I have it where you just put a code and it'll put it in my budget. It will do my balance sheet and it will do my income statement. But I would like to utilize QuickBooks if it's going to take time off my hands. But I was just wondering about that because I feel like I was going back in QuickBooks and fixing everything. That's why I
Yeah.
went to Excel.
Well, first of all, your workbook sounds amazing that you were able to set that up. So nice work there. And if it's working, that's great. So yes, QuickBooks Desktop is a little bit, it's a little bit dated now, and they're still using it, but they're putting putting all of their development money into QuickBooks Online. QuickBooks Online has AI built in. So the issue you were having when you transferred money from savings to checking, it now has functionality where you go into what's called the bank feeds, and it recognizes that they're related. So it recognizes that it's a transfer between accounts if you have both of those accounts set up, so that either duplication or, like you said, reporting it as an expense, it doesn't happen. It actually becomes a bank transfer. So it's just a matter of getting it set up properly. I think it will save you time because it's importing all of your data and then you're just coding it.
Because I'm changing, I already got approved for the grant, and we're moving from a certified family to a center. And I do all the bookkeeping, I do all the counting, and I do get my taxes done, and I do the payroll, but I think I'm going to change back to a payroll company, because when I first started, I did a payroll company. And then I was like, well, I could do it. It's not that hard. So I changed that for me to do it, but now I'm going to have more employees. So I was just wondering I would love to go back to QuickBooks, but would you recommend maybe somebody setting it up for me? Even though I have an accounting degree, I don't have a lot of experience with the new QuickBooks, because my degree was in 2016, and we just use the software, not online. What would you recommend on that?
So that's something that our firm does actually, and other firms can as well. So you can work with a firm like ours, and it would be over Zoom. If we were to do it with you over Zoom, you and I, and we would go through the setup of it. The fact that you have an accounting background is going to make it very easy transition for you. But once it's all set up and you know where to do all of the different steps, it's going to be a breeze. So you'll be fine with that. I did hear you say that you want to move away from doing payroll internally to use a service.
Yeah.
Check out Gusto.
Okay. I'm going to write this down.
Mhm.
And then one more question. Since I'm changing from a certified family, which was done from a rental home, so it was 100% write-off. I was thinking about closing my books for that center, and then change, and then of course keep them for 7 years, but starting fresh with the other center, or should I just continue? I have set up as an S corporation, so I don't want to change that, but I was just wondering if it would be, to start a new, because I'm not really taking any of the stuff with me, and I don't know if with the statement, with keeping all my depreciation, all that's going away, or should I start fresh and just close those books, or should I continue and with the balance sheet from the certified family?
If it's the same S corp, even though you're changing locations, if it's the same S corp, same tax ID, absolutely bringing over the balance sheet data that you have been tracking in Excel, if you're moving QuickBooks into QuickBooks, and keep it consistent, because it's still the same business, even though
it's a different location. Yeah. Okay. I was curious about that, because
that's a great question.
I'm not taking any of the stuff, so I guess I would just zero out the depreciation and just start, like, just show that it's new location with the new the equipment and everything, because everything's going commercial and everything here is residential, if that makes sense. So
it does. So it would be kind of like you're doing a disposal, or however you're going to get rid of those assets, where you're going to sell them or anything, that would all go into the accounting, and then there might be a loss or a gain based on what you sell those items for, but it would all stay within the same set of books.
okay, perfect. Sorry, I won't take all your time. It was
No, those are great questions. Thank you, Kelly.
Can you tell me that software one more time? Was it Gus?
Gusto. It's an application and it's wonderful. And it actually, you can set it up to integrate directly with QuickBooks Online. So it pushes all the journal entries over. So happy, if you want to reach out, I'm happy to answer more questions about that.
Okay, perfect. And your email is attached to this, or?
Yes, actually, let's see, maybe I'll make sure I'll provide it to Jen and Isabella so that everyone knows how to get in touch.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I'm just going through the chats, but if anyone else wants to unmute and send over a question, I'm going to kind of try to see if I can answer if there's any questions pending here. Anyone
I
else?
do have a question actually. So I'm applying for the grant, but I'm a little bit nervous because the Zoom call that goes over like the grant writing is super close to the deadline. Am I gonna have enough time, or should I just start writing? Because I did open it and I started filling it out, but I was kind of gonna wait to see. Do you suggest I just write it and then redo some stuff that may come up in the Zoom call?
I can answer that. So yeah, it is kind of right in that last week, our grant writing webinar. It will be in that last week before the applications are due. That one will be kind of a tips and tricks for the like narrative component of the application. If you are looking for like more support right now as you're, or like before that webinar, that maybe is more one-on-one or tailored for your application, I would recommend emailing us at cciFsupport@nwnc.org, and we can maybe get you connected with one of our technical assistance providers like Jen, and you could work more one-on-one for grant writing. But that webinar is kind of like this. It's meant for a big group of people, even though, you know, the applications will vary a lot. So yeah, does that help?
Perfect. Yep, thank you.
And then, yeah, there are a few chats with questions if you want to.
I see those, yes. Let's see. So I do, and just so everyone knows, Jen put my contact information in the chat, so feel free to copy it there. I do see a note from Lorenza about QuickBooks Online for your tax preparer. So oftentimes CPAs and tax preparers will use the QuickBooks platform. There's a tax component and they can connect it directly with your QuickBooks Online account. So there's another option if they don't do that, is you can invite them as an accounting firm on your QuickBooks. And this is online. Desktop is a different situation. But online you can invite them as an accounting firm user, and then they can pull what they need. The third option is you just provide reporting straight out of QuickBooks, because it is what's called GAAP compliant, which is the accounting standard in the United States. So GAAP compliant financial reports, and they can use those for filing taxes. The other comment I saw on there from Derek, you mentioned you're thinking about using Gusto. It's a great application for payroll, allows your employees to log in and get what they need. It allows them to fill out all of their hiring paperwork electronically. It is wonderful. It files all the taxes for you. Like I said, it integrates with QuickBooks Online. Any new client that comes for payroll to us, we definitely set them up on there because the price point is excellent and they have wonderful client support and customer support. Let's see. I've looked through here. I'm not seeing any other specific accounting questions, but if I've missed one, please let me know. Just going to scroll through. Otherwise, I'll just look here. QuickBooks, Texas. Oh, good, Derek. Any other questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat, but if for some reason I've missed your chat question, please just, if you want to unmute and ask your question live, that would be great. Jen or Isabella, is there anything from the presentation that you think I could elaborate on at all, or anything that you want me to talk about specifically that maybe needs more info?
What do you think, Jen? I think that was great.
Yeah, I think it was awesome. I think that one of the things that might come up for some of our clients is just that extra piece of technical assistance that might be coming down the road for accounting, CPA support, tax consulting preparation. I just wanted to let everybody know that how we work at the chamber is we have service providers such as Chrissy who work with us to provide these aspects of our work. So although you'll be coming to me with these questions, we'll be identifying where you need assistance. Sometimes, I mean, often you'll know where you need that assistance. Sometimes it'll kind of filter to the top through our conversation. But what we'll then do is refer you to one of our partners, such as Chrissy. So just like trying to share a little bit on process there so that you can understand a little bit more about how this works with us and our support. And if you have any questions about that, please reach out, unmute, let me know. We can talk about that as well. But yeah, I feel like you just did such an amazing job, Chrissy. You know, there are so many moving parts to this, and just going back to QuickBooks really being the leader in the industry. Another question that I hear a lot about QuickBooks is you know, QuickBooks software versus QuickBooks Online. What is recommended these days?
Yes, and I'm happy to speak about that. So every year they have a conference, and I go to that because it allows us to learn everything that they are doing. So they are putting all of their development money and funding to building out QuickBooks Online. The reason being is everything is in the cloud now, right? Everything is an online application. We have all these subscriptions, right? But QuickBooks Desktop, they're keeping that in place because there are just some people that are just more comfortable with desktop. However, if you're trying to integrate it with any other sort of cloud-based system, it's extremely clunky and it actually doesn't work that well. The nice thing about QuickBooks Online is they've built in a lot of AI to help keep that data clean. There's that receipts feature where you can upload your receipts. So I definitely steer people towards doing the online version. Also, another part of it that is why I do that is when you're trying to share data. Let's say that someone is working on your books that's not sitting right next to you, right? Because if it's desktop, you really have to physically be there working on that. If you're trying to transfer information to your CPA or tax person, it's not easy to do on desktop. They want to have a company file, and then you shouldn't work on it while they're working on it. And then there's also versions. So for instance, let's say you have QuickBooks Pro and you send it to someone that has QuickBooks Enterprise and they open that company file in another version. Like there's issues, they can't talk to each other basically. Online is online and it's easier to access. So I always steer people towards that direction. There is a subscription fee, but I believe desktop has a subscription fee now as well. So does that help, Jen? Is that
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see, Derek. Do you have recommendations for QuickBooks training? I've never used it. Our church treasurer currently does the finances, but if we branch to our own nonprofit, that may change and want to be ahead of the ball. I'm also curious, if I get the grant, I need to keep funding separate. If we keep a new fund, is that sufficient? So I'll speak to the first part and then maybe Jen, we can talk about the second section. So yes, there is a company that I refer people to, and I'm happy to send that out. It's all virtual. It's a company out of Texas and they do QuickBooks online training. And you'll have business owners all the way up to bookkeepers in there, but they do a good job of explaining it so that everyone understands. And I believe it's just a few hours over a few different days where they cover the nuts and bolts of how to work QuickBooks Online. So I'll send out that information. I can provide that information to Jen, and then she can provide that out.
That would be wonderful. We also have a self-guided open source access introduction and overview of QuickBooks Online that comes with 33 lessons. So you can really get grounded in QuickBooks and then start using it if you're one of those self-starters, right? And it's free. So that's nice.
And that might be the way to start, is see if that gives you enough of the kind of foundational understanding of the app, because the other one I was speaking of, there is a cost to that. But I love that. I love that you have that guide. I will check that out as well, Jen. I would love to see what's in there. Derek, tell me a little bit more, if you don't mind, about, so you said, I'm also curious, if I get the grant, I need to keep funding separate. Do you mean 2 separate bank accounts? So the grant money in one bank account, separate of your operating account?
Right, that's kind of what I mean. And also, as well as like, I mean, yeah, because like I said, the treasurer does most of our finances. I see all the finances and stuff like that, and I manage the budget and all that. But is creating just a separate fund gonna be sufficient? Does it need to be in a completely separate account, completely separate from other funding?
It's a really great question. And during the times, if you remember back during COVID times, I was telling people, a lot of people were keeping like their PPP funds and idle loans in separate bank accounts. I think in this case, if you have QuickBooks set up and you set up the class for tracking that grant spending, that should be sufficient, and you could have it in the same bank account. Some other businesses, though, feel more comfortable having those grant funds in a different bank account just so they can control the spending of it a little bit more. So they kind of are thinking about when they're moving funds, okay, we're covering rent or whatever you're paying with that grant, then you can transfer it. So it's kind of up to you how you want to do it.
Okay, I know the church currently uses a program called Power Church, so that's what they're currently using. I don't think that we would be using our own. That's what he's comfortable with. He's not one to use QuickBooks, but we're just trying to figure out going forward. But I don't think we're definitely not going to be our own nonprofit by that point in time. That's a process. So
Yeah. Oh, yes, it is. Well, Power Church might have a way to tag those expenses and things that you're using the funding for. So maybe he'll know, but Power Church, I'm going to make a note of that and look into that system as well.
perfect. Thank you.
So. Any other questions this afternoon? All really great questions so far. And just to reiterate what Jen said, yes, our firm Title Alba is here to assist you should you need that support as you're moving through the process. My contact information is in the chat, and I'm happy to answer any sort of specific questions that you might have that you want to talk about offline. And then, yeah, I mean, I think that covers it. It was great questions today, great topics covered, and so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Chrissy. I really appreciate your expertise and your partnership. It means a lot to us at the Northwest Native Chamber. I really appreciate it. I also just want to give a big shout out to all of our interpreters and Isabella for holding us all in a good way and making sure that everybody has access and that this is an equitable process. So I wanted to say thank you, everyone, and reach out anytime.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah, and everyone should be receiving a follow-up email after this that will include the recording and also Chrissy's contact information and any notes that she mentioned about specific softwares or links and things like that. We'll send that out either tomorrow or next week. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.